which has been actually made quite a bit easier. So welcome back to Senate Economic Development. We've now had an excoriating press conference, which I don't look forward to reading about, but there we are. Randy's back, we're all back, and here we are.
I commented in the press conference, the hard work that the House had done trying to make a bad bill better, but unfortunately they didn't succeed.
Oh, and that might be on which?
That was on S5.
On S5, got it, which is on the floor tomorrow in the House. So thank you so much for that. Happily, it wasn't on our workforce development bill. So we have the challenge in front of us of actually our position has improved considerably. We are being asked by Senate Appropriations to cut $2,324,026. And the discussion which would affect that is whether or not we continue, whether or not we want to add at this point money for the relocated worker program. And Randy and I,
that our position is not much improved.
Oh, it's still considerably improved.
Well,
so if we added 1 or 2 million, that would still have us having to look at trimming things to the tune of 4,324,000 if we added 2 million. Randy,
I would add also one of the important things about adding is this program still gives us publicity. We just had another article in Zillow, for example, and we've had articles repeatedly, and these programs are picked up by the business magazines quite regularly. And I don't know if you guys have calculated the return on investment in terms of the free print media that has come from this. It's significant.
Well, the first one was over $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it was even more. Like we would not be able to afford a marketing budget for what they want.
Yeah.
So
can I respond to that?
Yeah. So
or to the extent that I see value in that program, I do see value in advertising. But I don't think you were here when my concern with the program as a whole is that I'd rather invest in education for Vermonters who are here and Vermonters who have moved here, the forgivable loans. And I'm frustrated that maybe we have it, but I don't know where it is. An analysis of a return on investment of those funds.
Overall, that's my biggest criticism about the entire program is the lack of a true method of accountability, and that's something that we absolutely need to do. We just don't have time to do it in 2 days, but that absolutely needs to be done.
Right.
So I thought we could just quickly go around the room. I have a notion of what I would cut.
Okay.
I think that's what I asked our homework to be done this weekend. I think so perhaps what we should do is go around. I think we do have to decide if we're going to be supporting relocated worker at all, because it obviously affects what we decide to trim. We can either have that conversation first, or we can sort of talk about what we would trim. And I know how I'm feeling on some of this, and I'm really cognizant of the of Jane's channeling new programs in the back of my brain. So, and to that, and then the other thing, once we've decided what we're going to trim, is we need to discuss, after we've discussed that, is relocating if no federal grant comes through on the CHIPS grant, where we would relocate that $5 million, because David needs specifics for us to do that. So Randy, I think I'd like to begin with what your feelings are, what you'd like to add and what you'd like to take, what you'd like to trim.
Well, the first thing, ads are much easier than trims.
As we have found out from our witnesses.
I would like to add, again, the remote worker program, probably funded at $2 million. I think it's imperative that we stay on the board with that. And I wouldn't cut it to $1 million because I think that becomes too low. And we run out immediately and we run the risk of embarrassing ourselves. When it comes to cutting, I'm a mixed opinion. You know, basically, it's not that anything here is really bad. You know, the charge or the difficulty is in effect force ranking it. In a way, I look at my wishes. A of all the people that we had in, I would have each one of them look at that list and tell me, what are your highest priorities? And then what are your lowest priorities? I'm looking for the lowest priorities. That said, I would be more inclined, rather than cut anything big, I would be more inclined to slice.
Trim.
To trim each of these programs, particularly the larger ones, to a relatively small extent in order to get the number that we want, as opposed to taking one particular program and cutting it entirely. That said, those that might have the larger cuts are those, to me, that have the larger dollar,
Yeah.
that have the larger dollar amounts in them. And to that end, I'm struck by, it seems that most of the larger ones are ones that were also in the governor's ask as well, which I just find curious. If I were to cut somewhat, the ACCD Vermont training program, line 40 might be one that I would trim modestly.
That's the chips. That's what we need to have intact for
Well,
our
that's,
chip.
that again was one of my questions, is must you have the entire amount in order for that particular grant?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought it was.
I had thought it had been from your testimony, but Joan, you're here, so if you'd like to just elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're guessing about whether it's even enough at 5 million, just
I
because
know it
the
was
size.
at 10
of the-
before, and no, I guess it was 5.
Because
The
you're
governor's
hoping-
ask as well.
You're hoping for a grant of 500 million, right?
Or more, the entity that's gonna be applying, this will be huge.
And it's not just one entity, as I recall,
Well,
it's
there's
two.
one that we know of for sure, and then there are 2 others that are looking at it,
So maybe 3 entities.
right? But the one that we know for sure, it's going to be gigantic. Yeah, like,
And is,
When you say-
over $500
when you say a grant of 500 million, is this a grant that has to be matched by?
yeah,
To a
they
certain
don't, yeah, and they don't use the word match, they just say, what, their application has to be accompanied by a letter from the state
Okay.
that offers a commitment of resources, and they don't give an amount, they don't, this is all very subjective, which is why it's hard to answer the question, does it have
Yeah,
to be
when you say
5?
5, and this is, I assume, is a competitive grant among states.
Yes,
And that said, Vermont is a tiny state.
yes,
And if you're looking at catching the big fish, the others are going to have much bigger grants
yes.
to be able to match. And are we even in the ballpark?
We don't know the answer outright. We've talked to the congressional delegation about this concern. They've been talking to the Department of Commerce about this concern for small states, but again, it's a big unknown, so.
Well, I mean, that's one that leaps out at me.
and what's your feeling about the industrial growth at line 43? Because that is a new program
It is.
and also very sizable. I think the CHIPS grant, I guess I'm feeling that we need to hold on to that as a match, just it's.
So if you took the Regional Investment Rural Industry Development Grant Program and dropped it to 4 million?
So that's one. So how about if you just identify the areas you would be open to trimming? So line 43.
Just about everything, frankly, to one extent or another. Like I say, there's nothing here that I really consider bad.
Okay,
There's
so we-
things that are considered perhaps less good. And,
how do you
the
feel?
affinity program, I would scratch out, but frankly, $30,000
Yeah,
is not even worth fooling with.
Right.
So if it does have a benefit of having some retention, it's probably worth $30,000.
okay. So I think what I hear from you is maybe trim some of the larger line items.
I've done
and
some of the
as we
larger
go forward.
line items in order to
Okay.
get to our total. It's that simple.
And you would propose putting
There's
2
nothing
million.
that I would, at this point, as I look at this, nothing that I would line through.
Okay, so how are you? feeling?
It's interesting to hear Senator Brock's.
Yeah, no, it's just,
The one I don't feel good about is the upskill Vermont scholarship at UVM.
Right.
Because there are other agencies doing that same thing. That's what the adult education and literacy folks do, and I think they do a good job, and we're increasing their funding. So that's one I would actually not fund or reduce. I mean, that might be too much of it.
I had emailed Wendy Koenig last night because we had her here, but we forgot to ask her about it. It is, it's a federal program they get money for. And I can read you her email, but Wendy, you keep going, I'll pull up.
Okay, and I guess the kind of the criteria, one of the criteria I use is, can the private sector do it? Should the private sector do it? And is someone else doing
Will the
it?
private sector do it?
Will the private sector do
Well, not
it?
if we
Right,
do it.
well, but that's where the return on investment comes in too, because the private sector has to have a return on investment. And we do the things that don't intentionally, because sometimes they need to be done, or the return on investment can't be measured. But
Well,
that's
I mean, a
the
lot of
whole,
stuff, when we're, nurses training and dental,
right,
there's a return on investment there because we have a critical skill that we're short of.
exactly.
So I can understand that.
And it's an investment in people and their skills, and it's just harder to measure. And I wish we did measure that, and I'm gonna suggest that. I'm gonna keep suggesting that.
So
Okay.
on that, I just pulled up Wendy's thing. I just talked to Jill, who heads up this program. And we're federally required to ask Vermonters accessing these funds to attest, because I asked what was the eligibility requirement, income eligibility, if there was one. To attest that they have to attest that they are at a lower income level, or that they're using this course to upskill for career assistance and readiness. Our compliance folks must keep track of this for audit purposes and tell me we have both low income and upskill clients accessing the dollars. I also confirmed that we are not currently working with adult ed, but would be open to doing so. The program is helping so many, and it's very important to UVM. Thanks for asking about it, and I'm happy to answer further questions. But-
So many, did you talk at all?
I asked her about the
jobs,
numbers, but
What kind of jobs and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what community college, we're doing all kinds of grants to community
exactly,
college.
which goes
Yeah.
to Wendy's.
Yeah,
reason
And
for
it's
why.
geographically better to.
Yeah.
But,
use
what I
CCV.
don't have any input on is, what is it that they're doing that is either different than, or better than, or truly additive to what's being done in state colleges, or is it duplicative?
I think that is an excellent question, and the sadness of our lack of time, we could explore that, and we can certainly explore that for the future. So Wendy, that is one area that you would,
Yeah, and maybe it wouldn't make sense to cut it entirely. Maybe it should just get a haircut.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, but
just so you know, I have haircut it to 1.5 just while we're on this conversation. I've done that.
okay.
That's
So the VSC programs, I think we talked about those, the restorative justice bachelors and there's certificate in 3D programs. I think those are great. And if they have the capacity to do it, I'd love to fund them. Because again, those will help our workforce, those will help our students and the college itself.
I think of people in the restorative justice areas, where are they coming from now if there is not an educational program that trains them to do it?
There is. She said this builds on the Norwich program and the Castleton program, and also the law school, which is, and this is graduate and law school. So actually, and Catherine talks about it as a continuum.
And there are people who are going into criminal justice instead of restorative justice and going into jobs where the employers would prefer restorative justice. And it fits with Vermont values. And I think we would have people coming into state to go to that program, actually.
So given our new requirement for trimming less, what would you focus on trimming? Had you thoughts about the rural industrial,
Yeah.
line 43?
There's a lot of unknowns there. I think I understand the need. I would be fine with trimming that. If we have to have the remote payment, or the
Remote worker program.
remote worker program, it's not really a remote work. It's
No, it's not remote.
bringing
It is a-
people
it is-
It's
here.
relocated.
It's paying
Relocated.
people to come here.
Yes, it's-
If we have to have funding for that, I'd prefer that it come from
Yeah.
the rural industry development grant program. And I would do 1 million. I would do less than you would do, because I think 1 million would still keep us at a level where we would get press from it.
So you take it from 5 to 4?
I would.
So sorry, you take the rural industrial growth
From
from 5?
5 to 4 and put that 1 in the, I mean, I prefer to have it the way it is, but if we have to have the remote work, I'm just trying to find a way that we can all be happy. I would take the remote from 5 to 4 and put the remote in down to 1.
And what would you do with upskilling?
With what, I'm sorry?
To 1.5, you cut the upskilling, the UVM thing
Yes.
in half?
Yes.
Basically, we need to come up with, if we do 2 for that, we need to come up with 4.2 million in total.
Yeah, no, 4.324. Yeah, if we include the approps, I have included in deference to the appropriations committee to 117,000 they wanted for
Mhm.
the 250th commission.
And
Anything else? Wendy?
well, just 2 other things. The Department of Labor program, the 1.2
Yeah.
million, I don't know enough about it, but I'm just going on trust that they
Yeah.
can, they have capacity. I worry about their capacity just with all the
Mhm.
changes going on in
Yeah.
that department.
What about the Department of Corrections piece?
That was the other one I was gonna talk about.
Yeah.
I have, Department of Corrections definitely needs help. They need training. I don't like cutting the funding available. But I do, they need to use the funding, because if they're not gonna use the money, we could use it elsewhere. But I really, really want them to get the money they need to just stabilize the organization. I mean, they're in
Yeah.
a very bad situation.
They've also hired a major DC firm to work on culture at DOC.
Right.
So they already have an RFP. The governor has not asked for this money. The money is being spent currently on doing exactly that.
Mhm.
So I would just say that work is ongoing, is my understanding. They have still not spent the $1.4 million that they had to spend on what we wanted, which was actual workforce for inmates in our prisons, workforce development in our prisons. And it's concerning me a great deal that they're cutting some of the training programs that they have at the moment, the woodworking, the print shop, I don't know what they're doing about the license stuff, but that
that concerns me very much.
ongoing problem.
Yes.
They did mention, but I went to a tour, I
Yeah,
visited
you said-
Springfield Prison about 6 weeks ago or so. And they did mention that those modular training methods, but they just had an empty room. So it is in their queue, but they haven't made much progress.
No, and they have
Right,
400,
they don't have staff,
well, that's not their staff, that's CTE staff.
but I don't know if they have staff to manage new programs.
They accepted it and wanted it last year, $420,000 unspent. So it's that I also would love for us to follow up on that and really push them on that piece, because it's a key piece of getting people trained and ready to go back into the community.
It's very important.
Yeah. Okay.
And we don't
Anything
have
else you would
re-entry
trim?
facilities either. That's something else I learned, is we don't have re-entry facilities or.
We need more.
Yes.
We have some transitional housing, but not.
Well, but re-entry that
Yeah.
is supported and managed by either DOC or someone else in that field.
And anything else you'd trim?
Not majorly.
Okay. And
Okay. I think I channel Senator Kitchell fairly regularly, but these are new programs.
Mhm.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, which means that once we start them, there's going to be some obligation to continue them. So they would be the first things I would look at. And the Office of Engagement Forgivable Loans, it sounds like a nice program. We've already got shiny graphics.
Mhm.
But I could see a 21-year-old staying here for 2 years, getting, a good portion of their loans forgiven, and then they're gone. I mean, I really think until we solve some of the housing issues, we're gonna have a hard time holding on to folks. And so that's a lot of money under the bridge.
Mhm.
Again, it's like paying people to come while we're paying people to stay.
Well, that was our big investment last year,
Right,
was
I
to
mean,
encourage people to
but I
stay.
would look at the new programs.
That's not
Do you
new, I
count that
would
as
say.
new? Is that what you're trying to?
You listed it as new.
It-
Forgive off, isn't this? what you-
No, that's not a new program. The upskilling is new, line 33. Office of
I thought-
Engagement is a program we put into play last year, which is why they
All right,
had,
so what did you tell me? The restorative justice bachelors? is
Yeah,
that the
those
new
are-
130?
those are new.
Okay,
And
I would also. The state colleges are in such disarray right now. I'd be hesitant.
so you might trim those.
I might trim those. I would, what I don't have is what people got last year.
I have that.
The serve,
I can-
learn and learn,
So that's a good discussion because they got $1.8 million last year,
and now we've got them up to.
2.4. That is one
Yeah,
we
then
might
that
be
I
willing to
might
trim.
trim.
Yep, and what would you consider trimming it to? I had thought maybe 2.
I was thinking too.
I love
I'm
it. I
still
think it's
not
a
clear
great,
how they're fitting in. When you say you can go through one program and then go work for the other program, I'm wondering when they launch.
right.
Well, they already have launched.
They've
They had
launched.
No, no.
400 people this
Yeah.
past, or when the people launched out of the program?
Yeah, when you launch, I mean, it's just, we've got a lot of programs.
Right.
I think this does, but they're getting a sizable increase, and I'm not sure that's the best place for the sizable increase.
Yeah, and 2 million is still a good amount of money.
Yes, it is. If they only got one something last year.
I think they had 2 last year, didn't they?
They had
Or
$1.8
was it 1.8?
They got 1.8.
They're asking now.
So, anything else, Anne, that you would trim, and how are you feeling about the new program at line 43, the rural industrial development, which is a speculative, it's the most speculative. We've heard the strong need, but it's new ask and it's $5 million.
Well, it's down to 10. I try and preserve some of that. I think that we do. Canada is the biggest, closest trading partner we've got. And New York is just racking it up with Canadian companies.
Well, so would you consider trimming $1 million or cutting and doing it in half, 2.5, or Wendy had proposed taking it down $1 million?
Yeah.
That's where I
And I
was.
think Randy,
I
yeah.
think-
Yeah, that's where I was a million.
I
Okay,
need somebody with an adding machine to do.
I've got it. I'm
Okay,
collecting it here.
She has a sarcastic calculator for adding insult to injury.
Oh, that's funny. Did you make that up?
It's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. Anything else? Because we're getting close there, Rich. How are you feeling about relocated worker?
That's one of her favorite programs. She tells me that all the time.
I love it. No, I'm thinking maybe 2 million. If I have to trim, I don't want to trim anything.
I know, we all feel that way.
Yeah.
I think hopefully the public understands that most of these programs really are terrific and helping Vermonters in significant ways. That being said, we'll still be spending $40 million in
And that's
workforce
a
development.
huge amount of money, and
It is.
that's why, again, when this is over, we have to sit down and come up with a methodology to evaluate the return on investment. I mean, theoretically, this is what, in my opinion, the Government Accountability Committee ought to be doing, but it never has, and the way it's structured, never will. Which is why I got off it.
I got off it too. I couldn't.
There really
It's a waste
should be
of
a
time.
way.
It
Okay.
doesn't.
My-
Okay,
it's a
before we get to that,
theory.
Hmm.
It's a whole management program theory, which I'm not sure can work in something as large as the state. It would have to be done department by department. And the oversight committee was a joke.
Is it gone? Is it no more?
Oh,
I
no,
don't- Is this still working?
okay,
we had a
Can't tell, right?
director of accountability.
may I keep
Anyway,
us, may I
sorry,
keep
go ahead.
us
Yes.
focused on this, because we have our work to do here. I am hearing all of you, and I am at the moment looking at the following. And I am trying to represent your ideas as best I can. On the addition front, just for the moment, we're looking at adding maybe 2 million to the relocated worker. We are looking at, and I'm just, this is all for discussion. We are looking at cutting 1.5 out of the UVM upskill. We're looking at cutting 1 million out of rural and industrial site development. We're looking at 200,000 off of the VSC restorative justice. And we're looking at taking maybe 500 off of the 3D, the advanced manufacturing piece, with leaving that with 1 million. And then we're also looking at trimming 400 from the serve, earn, learn. And we are looking at maybe 250 from the DOC program, and we are looking at
250 from the
the Department of
corrections
Corrections.
supervisory management.
Supervisory management.
Yeah, that is not a program. I mean, they're already doing this work. They've already got a huge RFP with the Moss Group from DC working on exactly the same thing. This would add to that work. I would be happy cutting the whole thing. It wasn't in the governor's recommend. This is turning around the culture at DOC has been a top priority for the last 10 years. They are making dents, but not big enough, not fast enough, and retaining their workforce is critically important. Also educating their workforce for success as they graduate out of it is also
So why-
important. And we have obligations on both sides, I think. This is
Better management is a major factor in fixing the
Yeah.
problems
Huge.
within it. So
Yeah.
I had,
I have hesitancy about lining
Yeah.
through that,
I do
given the
too.
seriousness of
Okay.
their problem.
okay. Let
I
me
mean,
just.
if they've got a contract, they said they were adding to that contract. I'm assuming they've got an estimate from the contractor.
And they did say
They
would
did
use
not want, they didn't ask for this at all. So
Right.
just to remember that this is
Well,
not,
they can't, they work for the governor.
And they
Yeah.
did say they would use it. We asked them directly if they would use it.
Well, the question is, where did it come from? House?
yeah, it came from the House Corrections and Institutions
Institutions
Committee.
Committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
It'd be interesting to see what our institutions. Committee
well, you have it, the vice
Yeah,
chair right
we
next.
aren't, this is a operations thing and we don't do operations. I mean, we haven't discussed it. It's probably a better way to say it.
Okay, but yours would be the only committee that does discuss operations there, though.
But we're, the
No,
judiciary is,
Judiciary
No,
has,
theory.
Does the operations.
yeah, no one was letting Vince do prison
Well,
operations.
yeah, I can
is
understand.
that why?
Garage.
That's funny.
Okay. So we're now at at the moment, we are now at we will have cut 3.2 hundred, 400,000.
Is that with the Department of Corrections?
At 250
No,
is what you
I
said,
have
right?
not touched the Department of
Okay.
What
Corrections.
was it? The base manufacturing again? What was?
So we took 500 out of that. That was an ask of 1.5. And the restorative justice was 700 and I took 200 out of that. Server and learn, I took 400 out of that. And so that gets us to 3.2 million.
Okay,
And-
Office of Engagement Forgivable Loans, what did they get last year?
They got the same amount and they got the program up. You heard from Wendy and they have, they're hoping,
And they've got.
Yeah,
they're hoping for
And that's
400
cooking
kids.
now. I think we should keep that going.
Okay.
It only just got set up.
And it got a lot of press.
And
7 days. Yeah.
so.
And those are people who are already here in like Vermont.
The other thing with upskilling is we could take that down further and take 2 million out of that, at UVM, and that would get us to 3.7.
I think upskilling is something I'd rather see at the community colleges.
Well, that's what we have with
That's what-
adult
yeah,
ed.
that's what we've
So
been, adult ed. And then they feed into community college. It's local. You don't have to drive to Burlington and deal with parking and traffic and.
So
What are you taking out of upskill?
So if we took out the entire
3
thing,
million.
all three, at 3 million out of that, then we would have more than enough, because that would take us to 4.7 and we only
Are
need
they
to cut
using-
4.3.
are they doing the upskill program now? Is that what?
Yes, this,
I just read you Wendy's thing. It's $3 million. It's a new ask. It's an ongoing program they have that they're funded to do it's
Well,
adults.
do they have funding someplace
Yes,
else that we
federal.
aren't seeing? And
Yeah, it's federally funded.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I could support doing that. And then we could restore, that would give us 4.7. We need to cut 4.3 to 4. So wait, how would people feel about that?
Say again, are you
If,
proposing to cut the
if-
upskill entirely?
yes, if you cut,
they've got a program with funding from the feds.
Okay,
and I feel more strongly about the program we've already invested in with UVM for the college forgivable loan
totally. I do. too.
program. I think we're doing adult ed in other places, and I really want to fund adult ed through CCV, which we're doing in the 802 grants, and we're doing with adult education and adult CTE. I think those are critically important.
And we don't want to duplicate administration. We
Right.
really
Or
don't.
efforts. I mean, this is a
802
different,
Vermont
slightly
Yeah.
different group.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
that's
support
fine.
UVM's work on this big time, but we could also, that would liberate us to give us then return about $350,000 that we could put back into either the advanced manufacturing or the restorative justice. So we could cut less there. So if we do, just to reiterate where we are right now, if we did cut the 3 million and then we did $1 million from the, that would actually, that would take us to 4 that we would have cut from rural industrial and from UVM. Those are new programs.
Down to,
That means we need to now
Why
cut
is
another
this-
324.
this is all carried, that rural investment and growth, rural industrial. It says SF, Senate Finance, but I can't find it in my committee.
I don't think that's what
What does
SF
SF mean?
is. I don't know what it is.
And, but it's listed in.
What, Dave? Rural but the Rural Industrial Development Grant Program. It says SF, but it's in H484. I don't know what SF means.
Oh, it's a special fund?
Oh, it's a special
Special
fund.
fund.
Does it create, that creates the program and.
It creates a
the program has
special
its own
fund.
special funds.
for it, that it would be paid out
Special
of.
fund, okay.
It would create a special.
It does. The money is general fund transferred to this special fund.
So that would mean it would carry over if it wasn't used, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Is that why it's been made a special fund? Or one of the reasons?
It's just harder to raid.
Yeah,
One of the reasons
okay.
we're not getting very stock more.
Oh, right.
Support, so.
Perfect. Thank you. This is,
I'm good.
you have us so far, upskilling. Okay,
It's designed to revolve.
And that's
Right.
what,
okay.
yeah, thank you.
So at the moment, I think we have some consensus around 4 million in cuts,
All right.
right? With 2 million in the, so we need 324, 026 additional in cuts. So that would be, and we had talked about the restorative justice, the advanced manufacturing, and the serve and learn. We can restore some of that money and only cut, because that was $1.1 million, those 3 cuts, those 3 trims. We could, depending on your pleasure, we could still reduce the serve and learn by only 200,000, so that it would be 2.2, and we could restore the advanced manufacturing a bit. So what's your pleasure on those?
Is there any way to approve the Vermont State College funding, or some of it, in a way that would allow them to choose which program they wanted to stand up? Because a concern I have with just cutting like 700 to 500 is we're giving them part of what they need to stand up a program. So unless they're sure that the other funding will come, it doesn't make sense to half stand up a
Or we
program.
may give them not enough money to do anything meaningful.
Right.
Because they can't complete what needs to be done in order to have an effective program.
That's a better way to say it.
Mhm.
Yes, and
Yeah,
so
good
I'm
point.
concerned about that
Mhm.
and in both
So would you
programs.
restore that?
I wish we could talk to them to say, which would you choose? But is there any way to
Well,
give
there
them
is no
funding
them,
for
that's
both?
the problem,
Well,
right?
it's
So
the-
there is them, there's,
Well,
there.
Well, you've got the
Yeah.
2 department heads. They both wanted their programs. Mike Smith's
this-
been on the job for 2 days.
We have a very exciting advanced manufacturing program at
Yes.
VSC. This is not standing up their program. This
I'm
is
sorry.
adding to
Okay.
their program.
Okay, so then
Oh.
maybe that's the one we should focus on,
That would,
is the 3D program. Because it's also for high school kids and we don't have anything much
Much-
so far
and
for high
so
school
many
kids.
kids here don't get exposed to robotics or any of the new
I
manufacturing.
mean, that's really exciting.
It is, and it's the kind of thing that might make a kid want to go on in education.
So maybe what we want to do is fully fund that one so it can actually
Okay.
happen. And, give them a message that we think the restorative justice one is great too, but that would
I
wait for
think that
next
would
year.
leave us with a
Yeah.
very, a modest cut to restorative justice and a very modest cut to serve and learn. So
Yeah.
if we restore,
So
and
where
then
would
we,
you, on restorative justice, what number would you have there? based on your
I had,
calculation?
200, and then we need another, and 100, and then we need another 124,026, which we would cut from serve, earn, learn.
And so we would keep the 1.5 million for the.
We would keep the
3D.
1.5 million in advanced manufacturing for VSC. We would cut the restorative justice new program again by 200, which, sorry,
We haven't put anything in for the 250th.
yes, we did. Yeah,
did?
that's that. Yeah. Oh, don't
Okay.
worry. I did that right at the start.
Okay,
So
That's-
I think if we cut 124,000 from serve and learn, which is less than the 400 we were talking about,
mhm.
and cut the 200 from restorative justice,
Mhm.
we could do that, or we could cut the 200 or 324,000 from the serve and learn and keep the restorative justice whole.
I would do the restorative justice partially so that they could get going on
It was
it,
a
if it's
2-year
useful.
thing.
Oh,
Was
When
it?
she came, yeah, she
Oh.
said they needed to, it would take 2 years, I remember, to stand up
all right, so then that's fine to
and do that.
Well,
and they-
partially,
It is what it is.
but it's not all or nothing for them.
No, and I'm just
I
trying to,
mean, it
David,
would
do you
be
remember
a year
what?
from September, I think, before they could start enrolling students.
Yeah.
I'm just-
And then, I don't know, does the 700, does it cover paying a teacher?
That's their challenge, that would, we would, I can't remember what section it's in, but it is.
So I like Senator
So-
Clarkson, the one where we end up with 500,000 for the restorative justice.
So that would take us back, yeah, that's 500,000 for restorative justice, 1.5 million for their advanced manufacturing program, and taking
Serve and learn.
serve, earn, learn down with a trim of $124,000.
So then the total for them is what?
I will just do the math on that, and it is,
2 something.
yeah, it's
I had it
still,
down to 2.
it's 2275, yeah, 2276,
Oh, wow.
2275974.
I think we should round.
Well, it's not what approps want, so I'm gonna be exact with them and they can do what they want.
They will.
Yeah, they will anyway. So I would suggest that that is where we consider landing. Serve and learn at $2,275,974. VSAC with the advanced manufacturing at $1.5 million, the restorative justice at 500, taking down rural industrial investment in new site development to 4 million, and cutting the UVM upskill program.
In its entirety.
It's the state investment in it, and we would certainly entertain a fuller proposal for next year and finding out what they get in federal money. I mean, I'd be interested in helping adult education, but I don't want to duplicate efforts.
Now, this needs to go to approach this afternoon.
So our vote right now would be to make a recommendation to the Senate Appropriations Committee to cut and that we have fulfilled our obligation in cutting 4,324,26. The $4,324,026. And we have done that in the work we have just discussed.
And
So I'm
so
gonna go through it again.
just the final,
and some-
the numbers that changed, is the DOC is now at
Track.
250,000?
No, you
Let's
three.
go down the list.
Okay,
of
perfect.
what we have and what the
Yes.
new number is
Okay.
based on your calculation, right? Compared to what I had. So why
Okay,
don't you
so
start at the top?
I'd really like to be able to fill in a new column
Yeah.
on my table as you do this, so can I just ask you to
Yeah.
bear with me if I,
Yeah.
because
Sure.
you might be going in a different order than I have it, but.
I've got
I
it
just
all,
make sure I have
I've got it right here. So we go right down.
Okay.
We have the latest.
And I have a
from Sarah.
language change proposal, a tiny one.
Yes, and then we have to reallocate, we have to specifically decide where we're gonna reallocate the money. The 5 million if we don't
I
get
have
that.
money chairs.
Okay,
Oh,
okay, well, we can,
I'm not chairing, I can be late, but
okay, so let's hurry. all right?
okay, so are you working off of
If
this?
you're leaving, then I need to ask you a question if I may.
Yeah,
If they do a contingent reallocation of CHIPS funding, is there a date by which you will know?
I
whether or
don't
not
know
you're
that
gonna use
date.
that money?
I don't know that date yet.
Okay. So it
It's
would
the
be,
federal government, I
right,
think.
so it would not be safe to say something like, as of September 1st.
No, I would be nervous about that.
Okay,
so given,
We could
Okay.
just have it be throughout the fiscal year. Like during the fiscal year, if we don't get the funding.
David says we need to be specific.
again, somebody will have to have the authority to make a decision on some basis that the contingency is either met or not met, and then that triggers the authority to reallocate dollars in a certain way. It can be loose.
You can give it to joint fiscal, that's where it
You
usually
can do
goes,
that.
For,
or the emergency board. We can probably, that may come under the cap, we can reallocate anyway.
so we would like to have that, if that happens, and I don't know which the correct body is it the joint fiscal committee?
If it's gonna happen off-season,
Right.
joint fiscal,
So,
Well, but that's why I'm asking Joan the question. And my concern is that if you can't say September, can you say December? And if you can, January will be BAA.
right, that's what
Right.
I'm thinking.
All right, so maybe it's not worth it.
It's up to you.
Maybe it's not worth going through these.
it may
Yeah.
not be worth it at this point, but
We
I think
haven't
it's
spent it.
important for you to stay in touch with us on how that federal grant does.
Right.
Because if we don't, I know you've got to go. So let me just reiterate,
Can I vote yes?
yes, yeah. But I-
I'll just, here, how about this? I'll just do the
And then
check and then
Just do it.
We'll
fill out
finish
the-
it up, but at the moment, this is how we get to to the money that we talked about, and we'll go line by line after you leave. But we're looking at cutting the UVM upskill 3 million. We're looking at cutting the
No, just a
rural
second.
industrial 1 million.
Let's go down on a line by line.
We will after she goes.
No,
because
go
she-
down line by line, that helps me.
Okay, great. Okay, we are all set with everything until we get to line 18. And then at line 18, David, are you doing the same thing?
Maybe I'll just follow up after. You do your.
Why don't I do this with you, right? Because I have Sarah's latest amounts right here. So we've got Sarah. So line 18, we're adding 2 million.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Then the next change is down at line 21, which is we're adding 117,000. But the Senate Appropriations Committee is wanting. And we're-
The
So-
Vermont 25th, 250.
250.
Right. On line 26, we're
Serve, learn, and earn.
serve and learn, that new number is 2,275,974.
2,275,974.
Yep. This gets us to 40 million. The next change is on line, next change is on line 30,
Yep.
which goes from 700 to 500. Are you coming back?
Right now.
Promise? Then the next line is line 33, which is cut.
So 0.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
Line 32.
Line 32. No, we did not change anything
No, we
on
didn't.
line 32. That's critical
Or
care.
33 is where we changed it.
33
We just got that, that's zeroed out.
It's
Yeah,
been
struck
zeroed
that.
out. And line 43, we have taken to 4 million. Okay, does that come out to 40 million? Ha, Scott has been tracking it. It comes out to 40 million.
Yay.
I was listening, sorry to disrupt, I was listening and I think I'm missing 250,000 somewhere, but that's great.
That's because we didn't do it. The DOC, the Department of Corrections, my committee said, support it all the way. So with that, I would entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the Senate Appropriations Committee that we spend, what is our motion that we pass H484 back to them. I don't know, what is our motion?
Can we
that
talk
we-
about the
I don't even know
financing and not the language?
Yeah.
Because I just want to add that thing to the language about the program that's for small businesses on the Secretary of State. Or maybe I should
On
just
the-
do it as a recommendation or something.
You know what, why don't we, because
We,
because we do have language changes in
why don't we
here.
say total funding? How about your motion is
Our
total
our
funding?
passing out the total funding for workforce development and economic development, for workforce and economic development of $40 million. And
As reflected in the column on the
as
sheet
reflected in the
that
column.
you
we
will write out, you
Right.
just went through.
Okay,
And the language changes, we will get ASAP to them as well. So
They just need the numbers. They don't need the language.
Thank you,
changes
Joan.
they
Thank
have.
you.
They
thank
just
you.
need the numbers.
So there's an additional language change. I knew there was one more.
Can we vote?
So, yes, we can vote. So
okay, so you made the motion. Do we need to know sponsor and reporter? We'll do that
No,
later.
this
Okay.
isn't a bill.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Harrison is a yes. Senator Ron Hinsdale is not
Oh.
here.
I think the next one,
That we were voting.
that we're talking.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
Okay.
Sure, and I'll pick it up.
Thank you. If she comes in the next little bit, we'll add her
I'll
vote, but
open
I
the
think
tally.
keep it open, but
Okay.
we're at the moment 401.
Okay,
Thank you. Now, the last language change, Wendy had a
It's-
suggestion, David,
and
in the
well,
one-stop portal.
and I actually, Senator Brock might have an opinion on this too. That one-stop portal sounds like a great idea. Wish I'd read it
You
earlier.
have all that?
To have a portal for businesses when they sign up, and register. And
And who runs the program? Is it the
the state, Secretary of State. And it's a simplifying government for small businesses, which is the,
state?
actually, I'm sorry.
Where are you? What page?
It's at page 43. And it's the Secretary of State Secretary of Digital Services is the chair. That's a change. The committee is the Secretary of State, then Commerce and Community Development, Secretary of Administration. Oh, and actually, and Secretary of Digital Services. Does that need to be there? Is that, if they're the chair, do they need to be shown as a member of the committee? I don't know, whatever, okay. I mean, it's the same person, so,
You're in section 44.
correct.
Right.
So, what I would like to add is that the businesses get information on, the state wage regulations and other regulations, health and safety regulations, insurance requirements, just, if this is intended to be information for new businesses, I'd like to give them more information. And be specific, because it wasn't clear to me. There's a section at the top of page 45 where it says, after registration, provide information about additional and ongoing state requirements, which I would think would include, it should include, minimum wage, because Vermont has some interesting laws on when you pay people also that are different from other states. I think people should know about that, and that, wage information, labor information should be called out here.
Whether or not it should be on there, or whether or not there should be links to enable people to find it is, one of the things, if you create a portal that has so much information, it overwhelms people if it discourages them from wanting to.
Well, I just think it's our
But
obligation
you
to
sort
let
of
them
getting
know.
at it.
Scott, thank you.
Yeah,
for
to
tracking.
provide
That
an
was
easy way
really
to find
helpful.
it. It's the implementation that concerns me, not
Oh, yeah.
what they're doing.
Oh, definitely. Well, my understanding, they would get this information after they register. And I do hope that co-ops would be part of this
Non-refundable
online.
registration,
Yeah,
right, so-
really. Yeah, there's no looking back. I mean, you can even make it fun. That's, I would
Yeah.
argue, have, some fun stuff in there too.
Yeah.
But I just, our labor stuff is different. And I think it's important to let folks know about that early on, so they're not caught unawares. And it could just be a list, it could be, here are our links to,
Well, it says here, enhance state websites to simplify registration. To provide comprehensive one-stop compilation of other state business requirements, including permits and licenses.
right. Right. It just, I didn't see That it seemed like a lack to me to not be specific, especially about labor, health, safety, insurance, those kind of basic requirements. But I haven't spoken with anybody about this, and maybe that's already their intent, and maybe they're far enough along.
Very exciting. Okay, and so they are there to do that, and so they're coming back Tuesday. That's fine. You're here working, and I'm here working, Oliver's out working at Stanford, he's a fellow, he's a.
Do you know if this group has started working?
So
Oh, yeah.
this is like 5 or 6 years
And
old.
then he's up at a conference.
Oh, yeah, not 2019.
Okay,
Um,
do we have David for, are we gonna drop the reallocating? Sounds like we're dropping the reallocating language.
Or maybe maybe communicate it elsewhere. Do we have other ways to communicate that?
I think we just need to track it with the budget adjustment. I think we're not gonna have an answer fast on that. I mean, unless we want, I mean, we could put it in the language. We aren't giving them the language right at this. I mean, we can, I'd love to get it done and over to them ASAP. And we're all set on Fred's language, on this language. We're all set on the language except for the reallocation and anything you want to add to the one-stop portal.
I
I
don't
think
know
like-
enough, but you know what I'm thinking.
So this has been around for, like I said, a long time.
We passed
just
this in 17 or 18.
Can't get it to work. And what they're doing is not necessarily the implementation,
Right, which is,
but they're doing a cost and administrative design review of what it would look like and what it would take to be able to further enhance this one-stop portal.
And we've been thinking about getting ready to start the implementation of a process to get to it.
That we've been thinking about for 6 years.
That's
So-
hysterical.
Um,
So, and are they established? Is there a group?
yeah,
the steering committee exists,
Okay,
but Secretary of State doesn't want to be in charge of it.
right.
That's why ADS
Oh.
is taking over because it's a very much a digital.
okay. All right, so there is some
Well, it's a
progress maybe.
combination of digital and
Didn't change anything since I left.
and internal policy redirection. I mean,
That's true. So the other thing I would say is that for the most part, I think this, you can say whatever you want it to say. I get really nervous when you start talking about telling people what they need to do and comply with, because
Yeah.
that's legal advice.
Yeah,
That if things went wrong would be very bad for the state and the liability of Secretary of State's office or other for somebody not getting their permit, not setting up their affairs properly. It's just a risky proposition for the state to be giving advice that crosses over into the realm of legal advice and what a business has to
There'll be
do.
a very long disclaimer at the bottom.
so I would
that's
suggest,
interesting.
I
Okay,
suggest leaving it as it is right now. We're gonna get a report back next
That's
year,
fine.
and then we can add whatever we need to add.
yeah, and I can find out a lot more in the meantime.
I think it's worth talking to the Secretary of State's office about it.
Okay,
Because they've been involved all along. On the reallocation piece, it sounds like there's a lot of risk on the timing, and I'm not sure much reward there is if your window really is only a few months between BAA and when they might know.
And quite honestly, we're not cutting over $8 million, so it's a little less of a feel-good thing that we were wanting to do, to say, you know, we originally had cut a lot more, and this was Wendy's idea. In some ways, I thought it was a great idea, which is, we're going to cut you completely now, but if this money reemerges, this is where we would spend it. So I think our problem is
That's
a
true.
little less intense,
Yeah.
and I would encourage us, I've just asked Joan, and I encourage us to track that grant and see if we get that federal grant.
The contingency method is not unprecedented, but the
No, I know.
uncertainty in this case seems to be quite high.
and we're in a rush. It's fine. And what we were talking about using it for was the state college stuff, which we've mostly
Yeah.
funded. So it's good.
So I think we're in pretty good shape with
Wonderful.
the Tom Kennedy's assessments. Fred Kenny's additions
Got that already.
and Joan's additions.
Got those.
I think we're
I
in
just
good
have to
shape.
change the numbers. But Scott sent me that and I'm sure JFO will revise it to me. And that way,
What do you mean I changed the numbers?
well, I have, I mean, all of this is actual bill language that will have to go into the budget. So I'll have to change my,
Do you want me to go through that with you right now?
Well, we're actually still meeting and Keisha's here. So,
Ah,
so
okay,
should we
let's
have
go,
her?
And then let's go offline. I'm sorry, I didn't know that we were still meeting.
Well.
Jeez,
in
we
terms of-
adjourned.
of the
So
vote,
we're just
we
gonna
could
have,
Keisha vote.
Right, that's, yeah.
Keisha, we would like to have you weigh in. We have, we would love to have you, we are making a recommendation to the Senate Appropriations Committee to spend $40 million on workforce and economic development.
And
We
I
have
think I
managed
got a
to-
preview. Yeah, of the big ticket items.
Very good consensus work on this.
Yay. I hear it. I hear it. And it's never easy, but it's less of a haircut than in the past. And we can't start new programs without being really thoughtful about promises we make. So I'm hearing all of that and looking ahead because we have another 3-ish or more weeks in the process. So this all sounds great to me, especially the consensus piece. You don't want to hear that I'm like folding onesies and lost track of time, but here we are.
We love the fact that you've already done laundry at home.
Yes.
At least you're home. So I think we've landed in a good place. And if we would love to have your vote. So Madam Clerk, would you be kind enough to,
So
Finish the
I'm
vote.
reopening the action on the bill.
yeah, no, we're just adding for Keisha's vote. so
Okay,
that
I
we
didn't know if I'm supposed to say something. Okay, so Senator Ron Hinsdale,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks
So the
to
vote is 5-0-0.
Great, perfect. And now we can adjourn. Thank you, everybody. I'm so sorry. I did not realize we were still live. But thank you. This was a